Claire sat at the dinner table, feeling tired and heavy. Her back ached, and her ankles were swollen. She rested her feet on a small chair next to her, hoping no one would mind. Across from her sat her husband Ryan, and his parents, Diane and Mark. The room was quiet, except for the sound of silverware clinking on plates. Claire reached for her glass of water when Ryan let out a loud sigh. He pushed his plate away and ran a hand through his hair. "You know," Ryan said suddenly, "this is getting ridiculous." Claire blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" she asked softly. "You," Ryan snapped, pointing at her. "You're a burden, Claire. Do you even realize how much you've cost me? The doctor bills, the time off work, the stress. You just sit at home all day, doing nothing." Claire's mouth fell open. Her face turned pale. Diane, Ryan's mother, smirked slightly, but said nothing. Mark, his father, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, looking down at his plate. I didn't know you saw me like that," Claire whispered, her voice shaking. Ryan stood up, walking over to the counter. He poured himself a glass of wine, ignoring her completely. "I've been carrying our child," Claire said, trying to hold back tears. "You wanted this baby too, Ryan?" Ryan let out a short, cold laugh. "Yeah, well, maybe I didn't realize how much work it would be." Claire's heart pounded. She wanted to stand up and leave the room, but she felt stuck, frozen in place. She looked over at Diane, hoping for some support, but Diane just raised an eyebrow and gave a small, dismissive shrug. Mark finally cleared his throat. "Ryan, maybe—" "No, Dad," Ryan cut him off sharply. "She needs to hear this." Claire lowered her head, her hands trembling. She felt completely humiliated. How had things gotten this bad between them? They used to laugh together, dream together, plan for their future. Now she sat at a table, being called a burden by the man she loved, in front of his parents. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. She couldn't break down here, not now, but inside. Something cracked. She wondered if their marriage was already over, even before their baby arrived. Claire remembered the early days with Ryan so clearly, it almost hurt. Back then, he was the man she'd dreamed of, funny, kind, and always ready to sweep her off her feet. On their first date, he had brought her flowers and talked about how much he wanted a family someday. When they married, he'd still been that man, helping her set up the nursery, kissing her stomach softly, whispering to the baby. She had felt so lucky, so sure she had found her partner for life. But somewhere along the way, things began to shift. It started small. Ryan began working late, claiming the office was short-staffed. Then, when he came home, he was too tired to talk, or cuddle, or even ask how she was feeling. He started sighing when she reminded him about doctor's appointments. He would roll his eyes when she told him how scared she was about the baby's arrival. Claire, who had always been confident at work, had been forced to take an early leave when pregnancy complications put her on bed rest. That decision, though necessary, chipped away at her self-esteem. She no longer contributed financially, and Ryan made sure she didn't forget it. "Must be nice," he once said, as he grabbed his briefcase. "Sitting at home all day while I handle everything." Claire swallowed her hurt. She wanted to tell him how hard it was, how lonely, how scary, how much she hated depending on him for every little thing. But every time she tried, his face hardened, or he disappeared into his phone, or he gave her that cold, distracted nod that meant, "I'm not listening." There was another shadow in the room too, Diane, Ryan's mother. Diane had never openly disliked Claire, but there were sharp looks, little comments, and soft-spoken doubts. Claire often caught her whispering with Ryan, their heads bent together. "She's just so sensitive," Claire once overheard Diane say. "Are you sure she's ready to be a mother?" Claire wanted to believe Ryan defended her, but lately it felt like Diane's voice was louder in his ear than hers. Most nights, after Ryan fell asleep or stayed out late, Claire would sit alone in the nursery, her hands on her belly, feeling the little kicks and rolls. She would whisper to the baby, trying to stay calm, trying to remind herself she wasn't truly alone. Then she'd open her journal. She poured her heart onto those pages, her fears that Ryan didn't love her anymore, her worry that she was just a burden now, her frustration that her life had shrunk to the four walls of their home. "I miss who I was," she wrote one night. "I miss who we were." Sometimes, Claire wondered if Ryan regretted the pregnancy altogether. He never said it, but his distance, his cold words, the way he flinched when she tried to hold his hand, It all painted a picture she was too scared to face head on. And yet, she kept hoping he would come back to her, hoping they could survive this, hoping the baby would bring them closer again. But deep down, under all the hope, there was a creeping fear that maybe, just maybe, she was slowly losing everything. Her independence, her marriage, and the man she thought would stand by her side. It began with Diane. Ryan's mother had always had a sharp, polished presence, the kind of woman who smiled sweetly in public, but made you feel small with just one glance. Diane often visited under the excuse of helping Claire prepare for motherhood, but Claire saw how she walked through their home, inspecting things like she owned them. One afternoon, while Ryan was at work, Diane stopped by unannounced, carrying a bag of baby clothes. She set them on the couch, giving Claire a once-over. "You look tired, dear," Diane said smoothly. "Are you sure you're managing all this?" Claire forced a smile. "I'm doing fine, thank you." Diane's eyes narrowed just slightly. "Ryan's been so worried. You know how important it is to stay stable, especially now." That word, stable, echoed in Claire's mind long after Diane left. Later that evening, Claire went looking for the insurance paperwork Ryan had mentioned, digging through the desk drawers in the study. As she searched, a thin envelope tucked at the back caught her eye. She almost ignored it, but something told her to pull it out. When she opened it, her hands began to tremble. Inside was a legal document, a prenuptial agreement. Claire frowned. She remembered signing a prenup, but this part, this clause, felt unfamiliar. In small, tight print, it outlined a section she had never noticed. If Claire were ever deemed mentally or physically unfit, all shared assets would fall under the control of Ryan's family. Not just Ryan, his family. Her stomach twisted. She read the section again, heart pounding. How had she missed this? Had she even seen this version when she signed? Suddenly, the walls of the house seemed to close in. Needing air, Claire moved to the bedroom, hoping to calm herself, but then she heard a low voice coming from Ryan's office. His voice. She crept closer. The door was cracked open just enough. "She's slipping, Mom," Ryan was saying on the phone, his voice quiet but clear. "She can't handle the stress. I mean, she can barely get out of bed some days." "You're right. The baby would be better raised with us if she keeps falling apart." Claire's knees nearly buckled. She clutched the wall, forcing herself to keep listening. "We'll get the paperwork ready," Ryan continued. "It's all covered in the prenup. If we document her breakdown..." "Yeah, I know. I'll be careful. She's emotional, but she trusts me. She won't see it coming." Claire's vision blurred with tears. Her heart raced so hard she thought she might faint. This wasn't just coldness or distance. This was a plan, a betrayal carefully laid out between her husband and his mother to make her look unstable, take the baby, and leave her with nothing. She stumbled back into the hallway, gripping her stomach, gasping for breath. He's been preparing this. All those quiet comments, the way Diane kept showing up, the way Ryan withdrew from her, made her doubt herself. It had all been part of something bigger. Claire's world spun. She had trusted Ryan. She had believed that even if they were struggling, they'd figure it out together. Now, she realized she was just a pawn in their cold, strategic game. Panic surged through her chest, but underneath it, something else stirred. A sharp, painful clarity. This wasn't just about saving her marriage anymore. This was about survival. Claire sat on the floor of the nursery, her knees pulled up as far as her belly would allow, arms wrapped tightly around herself. The soft yellow walls she'd once painted with love now felt like they were closing in. She reached out and ran her fingers over a tiny onesie folded on the dresser. Her tears blurred the little embroidered ducks on the front. She remembered picking it out, laughing with Ryan in the store, his arm around her, promising he'd always take care of them, that Ryan was gone. A choked sob slipped from her throat. Her mind flashed through the months behind her, moments she had quietly pushed aside, the way Ryan no longer looked at her when she spoke, how Diane always seemed to arrive right after an argument, ready with cool, comforting words, but never for Claire. The little comments, "Maybe you're just too sensitive, Claire. Pregnancy is making you dramatic. Mom said you might be overwhelmed. Maybe she's right." She had believed them. Claire pressed her face into her hands, shaking. When she heard Ryan's car pull into the driveway, she wiped her face, forcing herself to stand. She couldn't stay silent anymore. She needed to confront him, to understand if she still had a chance, or if everything was already lost. He walked in, loosened his tie, and barely glanced at her. "I found the prenup," Claire said quietly. Ryan looked up, his face still. "What about it?" "You're talking to your mother about taking the baby from me." He let out a long sigh, rubbing his temple. "Claire, you're being paranoid. Honestly, this pregnancy has made you so emotional. You're imagining things." Her heart cracked. "Don't do that," she whispered. "Don't make me feel crazy." "I heard you, Ryan." He walked past her to the kitchen. "I'm not having this conversation with you when you're like this." Claire stood frozen in the hallway, feeling the distance between them stretch into something unbearable. That night, she lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Ryan slept soundly beside her, his back turned. She picked up her phone, scrolling through her contacts, longing to call someone, anyone. Her parents were in another state, busy with their own lives. Her best friend from college, Emily, had drifted away over the past few years. The friends she used to meet after work had stopped calling once she went on bed rest. She was utterly, heartbreakingly alone. Her hands trembled as she set the phone down. "If I can't even reach anyone now, how will I fight them later?" The next morning, she sat at the kitchen table while Ryan rushed out the door, kissing her forehead lightly, as if nothing was wrong, as if her entire world hadn't crumbled. She stared at the untouched coffee cup in front of her, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle over her shoulders. Would she have the strength to fight? Would anyone believe her if she spoke up? Would Ryan make her look unstable, emotional, paranoid, just like they planned? The baby kicked gently inside her, and she pressed her hands over her stomach, fresh tears filling her eyes. She was terrified, not just of losing her marriage, but of losing herself. Claire had always been strong, smart, independent. But now, sitting there, isolated and doubting everything, she didn't know if that version of herself still existed. And the baby wasn't even here yet. What would happen when the day came? Would they push her aside at the hospital? Take legal steps she couldn't fight? Her chest tightened with panic, her breaths coming faster. She squeezed her eyes shut, whispering softly, "Please, please, I can't let them win." But her own voice sounded weak in her ears, and the house, once filled with hope and dreams, now echoed back only silence. Claire's old college friend Sarah reaches out after seeing a worrying social media post. "Claire, are you okay? I saw your post. You seem lost," Sarah's message read. Claire sat on the edge of the bed, her heart heavy, her swollen belly pressing against her knees. She stared at the screen, hesitating. Finally, she typed back, "I'm not okay." Within minutes, Sarah was calling. Claire's hand trembled as she answered. "Claire, tell me what's going on," Sarah said softly. Claire broke down. She told Sarah everything, the coldness from Ryan, the way he dismissed her feelings, the constant quiet tension with his mother Diane, the hidden prenup she found, the awful phone call she overheard about them wanting to raise the baby without her. "I feel like I'm going crazy, Sarah," Claire whispered, wiping tears from her face. "I can't trust anyone here." "Claire," Sarah said firmly, her voice cutting through Claire's fog, "you are not crazy. And listen, I'm a lawyer now. You still have rights." Claire's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" "Meet me. Let me help you." They met the next day in a quiet coffee shop across town. Claire, wearing loose clothes to blend in, felt her heart pounding as she saw Sarah walk in, sharp, confident, with that same spark she remembered from their college days. Sarah sat down, pulled out a notebook, and listened carefully as Claire poured out every detail. When Claire handed over the copy of the prenup, Sarah flipped through it with practiced eyes. "This clause about being mentally or physically unfit only works if you've been medically or legally declared that way," Sarah explained. "Have you been officially diagnosed with depression or anything like that?" "No," Claire said, shaking her head. "I've been down, but no diagnosis, no medication." Sarah leaned back, her eyes sharp. "Then Ryan and Diane are bluffing. Legally, you're still the baby's primary caregiver. They can't just take your child from you based on their opinion." Claire sat there, stunned, a flicker of strength stirring inside her. Sarah leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Here's what you do next. Start documenting everything. Write down what Ryan says, what Diane does, how they treat you. Keep copies of texts, emails, even make notes about their behavior. Build a record. You're stronger than you think, Claire." For the first time in weeks, Claire's shoulders straightened. She wasn't powerless. She wasn't alone. That night, Claire sat in the nursery, surrounded by soft baby clothes and tiny blankets, her notebook open on her lap. She began to write, the cold words, the gaslighting, the controlling moments. Every word on the page made her feel just a little steadier. When Ryan walked in and barely acknowledged her, Claire looked at him with new eyes. She wasn't broken, she was preparing. On the day of delivery, Claire woke before dawn, her body tense with sharp, rolling contractions. She breathed through them, gripping the edge of the bed. Ryan stirred beside her, annoyed. "Already? Can't you wait a little longer?" he muttered, checking his phone. Claire bit back a retort. She had prepared for this moment. At the hospital, Ryan immediately tried to take over, barking at the nurses, waving paperwork, trying to handle insurance forms and medical decisions. Claire lay in the hospital bed, sweat beading on her forehead, breathing through another contraction, but her mind was clear. She remembered everything Sarah had helped her arrange. The hospital staff, calm and firm, followed Claire's directive. She had set up advanced medical instructions and a legal notice that only she could make decisions about her care and her baby. Sarah had worked behind the scenes to make sure Ryan couldn't sign or alter anything without Claire's direct, written consent. When Ryan snapped at the nurse, demanding access to the birth certificate forms, the nurse calmly said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Harris, but per legal notice, we are only authorized to work directly with Mrs. Harris on these documents." Ryan's face twisted in shock. "What? No! I'm her husband." "Yes, sir," the nurse said evenly, "but your wife's legal counsel has already provided the necessary paperwork. Everything goes through her." Claire, even through the pain, caught the moment Ryan's confidence cracked. He leaned over her bed, voice low and sharp. "What did you do, Claire?" She met his eyes, sweat-soaked and exhausted but unflinching. "I protected myself. And our child." Ryan's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. He stumbled back, blindsided. The labour stretched on, long and grueling, but Claire held on. She focused on the tiny life she was bringing into the world, not on Ryan's angry pacing or his whispered calls to his mother. When the baby's first cries filled the room, Claire's tears flowed freely. The nurse gently placed the baby on her chest. "Congratulations, Mama," she whispered. Ryan hovered near the door, unsure, shut out from the decisions he'd once assumed were his to control. Claire, cradling her newborn, felt a fierce, quiet victory rise inside her. This was her moment, and no one, not Ryan, not Diane, was going to take it away. Ryan's parents arrived at the hospital late in the afternoon, their faces tight with fake concern. Diane swept into the room, eyes darting past Claire to the baby. "Oh, darling," Diane cooed, brushing past Claire like she wasn't there. "Let me hold my grandbaby." But the nurse gently stopped her. "Mrs. Harris will need the mother's permission." Claire sat up, tired but alert. "No, Diane," she said softly but firmly. "Not right now." Diane's eyes narrowed, and she turned sharply to Ryan. "Ryan, do something." Ryan, who had been pacing in the corner, suddenly froze. All the confidence he usually wore like armor seemed to crumble. He ran a hand through his hair, looking smaller than Claire had ever seen him. I can't," Ryan stammered. Diane's voice sharpened. "What do you mean you can't? This was the plan, Ryan. You said after the baby." "Stop, Mom!" Ryan burst out, his voice cracking. Claire watched in stunned silence as Ryan's shoulders sagged, his face crumpled, and he sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "I was going to leave," Ryan mumbled, his voice muffled and broken. "I was going to leave after the baby was born. I thought it'd be easier. Mum said it'd be easier. But Claire, she fought back. She didn't let me." Diane's mouth fell open in shock. Claire felt the air shift. She looked at Ryan, this man she had once trusted with her heart, this man who had crumbled the moment things didn't go his way. She expected to feel pure rage or triumph. Instead, she felt a strange mix: pity for his weakness, anger at his betrayal, and most of all, a deep sense of release. He was never strong. He was never the man she thought he was. She didn't say anything right away. She didn't need to. Holding her baby close, Claire let the truth settle in the room. Ryan was crying. His mother was stunned, silent. And Claire, the one they thought was the burden, was the only steady, unshaken person there. She had won, not with revenge, not with yelling or fighting, but by standing tall, protecting herself, and refusing to be erased. It wasn't a perfect victory. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was hers. Claire held her newborn close, feeling the soft rise and fall of tiny breaths against her chest. She sat by the hospital window, the early morning light washing over her face. Outside, the city was just beginning to stir, the sky brushed with soft pink and gold. Beside her, Sarah sat quietly, a gentle presence, sipping coffee without a word. She understood this was a moment that didn't need filling. Lowering her gaze to the baby's tiny curled fist, Claire traced it softly with a fingertip. Her heart felt both heavy and light, tired, bruised, but steady. Ryan was gone now. His belongings had been cleared from the house, the lawyers handling the last details. The road ahead wouldn't be smooth. There would be lonely nights, hard choices, and moments of doubt. But in this quiet space, fear had no place. A sense of calm settled where panic once lived. Leaning down, she kissed the baby's soft head and whispered, "We're going to be okay." Sarah offered a gentle smile, resting a supportive hand on her shoulder. Claire responded with a small, grateful nod. As the sun rose higher, she let her eyes close for just a moment, soaking in the warmth of the tiny life cradled against her, the steady presence of a true friend, and the quiet knowledge that she had walked through the fire, not untouched, but stronger. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it belonged fully to her. True strength is not found in those who control or betray, but in those who rise after being broken, standing up for themselves, protecting what matters, and choosing their own path with quiet courage.